Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Cori Lefkowith is a multiple certified personal trainer, author, and founder of Redefining Strength. Since 2014, Cori and her team have helped thousands of women, most over 40, feel strong, capable, and finally in control of their bodies. Their approach is simple: to meet their clients where they are, build a plan around their real lives, and coach them through every step with no fluff, no guilt, and no guessing. She is the author of her upcoming book, The Strong System: Transform Your Mindset and Build Your Best Body at Any Age. The book combines mindset training, sustainable habits, and adaptable fitness and nutrition strategies so that you can make progress that sticks. STRONG is an acronym which stands for significant, targeted, repeatable, optimized, non-negotiable, and GO, a powerful framework that has transformed thousands of lives. Cori helps her clients do just that by explaining how to master their mindset and stay motivated and consistent and avoid habit relapse, personalizing a plan and adapting it as you change, using metabolic muscle building protocols and the macro method that works best for you, and build the leanest, strongest, fittest, healthiest version of yourself. Cori Lefkowith, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you for having me, Casey. I'm super excited to chat.
I'm super excited to host you. You've been very patient with me all morning. I got the time wrong on our start. Luckily, I figured it out after about 5 or 10 minutes. So thank you very much for being patient with me this morning. I was just kind of lollygagging around waiting for our interview to start, and I could have been a little bit more prompt. But anyway, I kind of half joked in a recent episode that we're changing our podcast name from Boundless Body Radio to Victory Belt Radio. So hopefully they can pay me millions of dollars to host all you authors. And you kind of half joked also and said, well, we're just the best. We're just the best authors. And I have to agree.
I'm honored to be alongside so many other great enthusiasts for fitness, experts, professionals. So I'm super excited to be added to their list of authors. And I forgave you because you were out walking. And walking is such a great activity for fat loss, for stress relief. So highly recommend that. And, you get a pass because of that.
I love that. It's my favorite activity. It's a little bit harder around here in the Salt Lake Valley when it starts to get cold. I have to bundle up a little bit more, but I couldn't agree more. It's one of the best activities you can do. So I absolutely love that. We're going to cut ahead in your story just a little bit. We'll go back and kind of get the full story and the contents of your book. But I want to ask you, just what was the process like of being approached, wanting to write a book? Is this something that you've wanted to do for a long time, or how did this come about?
That's a great question. And everything always seems like an overnight success. Like, oh, you just got a book deal. And a lot of my clients are like, this is so crazy. You got this. And I'm like, no, this is decades of work to get here. And it was putting out probably literally a YouTube video once a week for 10 years, where we were even in China. So we were in, I think it was Beijing, going up a Buddha steps and filming a stairs travel workout. We filmed one just in the middle of the city too, but we filmed one every single week. So we put out great, in my opinion, great content consistently for over a decade to get this opportunity. And while I've always loved writing, I would say that's where I started. I started with a blog, which name I should not even mention. It's slightly embarrassing. Maybe you'll get it out of me. But I started with a blog writing and wanted to be more behind the scenes and share my passion for diet, for exercise, for the empowerment that I was finding through it. And so I've always enjoyed writing. So when this opportunity did come, it was right up my alley and I jumped at it. But I will tell you, I had not considered fully writing a book, even though I loved writing. And it was a long time in the making. And I feel like hard earned.
Yeah, good for you. No, it's so important when you're creating content to have reasonable expectations about how much content you have to create. And that consistency is so, so important. If somebody has an idea that they're going to create something in 3 months, 6 months and put out YouTube videos, you're competing with so many other people out there that have been doing it for a long time. And so to be consistent with something and continue on that cadence of a good quality video every single week is incredible. And yeah, that's a great backstory to how it got to the book. What was the hardest part about writing the book?
Doing it. Isn't that always the case? I sat down after getting the opportunity, had the subject, because I think sometimes coming up with what you're passionate about is the easy part, right? I'm excited about writing about this. I want to do it. And so I had the topic and I opened that first Word document. And I remember sitting there, looking at my computer as it blinked and being like, now what do I do? And it's hard where you feel the overwhelm of all the stuff you could write about, all the stuff you should do. And I think this relates a lot to our diet and exercise journeys, our health journeys, our life in general, right? Where we get overwhelmed by all the potential, all the possibility, all the things we could do. And ultimately, the only way the book got done was by typing that first word, even though I probably went back and deleted half of the first stuff I wrote, it was just by starting imperfectly, messy at the wrong time. I'm pretty sure I was like super busy that first weekend I wrote and didn't really have time for it. But I'm like, if I don't commit now, I won't do it. And it's even like with the consistency with the YouTube videos to get the opportunity. There were days I didn't want to film them. There were times where I didn't want to step in front of the camera. I mean, honestly, like I would have never told you I'd be doing any of this in front of the camera, taking half naked photos, any of that stuff, because I was always the person that wanted to be behind the scenes and just share my information. So all of this came from like acting as if putting myself out there, just taking that small imperfect action and building on it. So it honestly started sitting, staring at my computer, being like, what the heck am I doing? Having a little imposter syndrome, all that stuff, all the stuff we all go through.
Yeah. Well, it came out great. I really love the book. There's already so many parallels to you writing the book and what the content in the book actually is and how people, really need to change their mindset, how they can prevent, past failures from affecting them today. So many parallels there, like I said. So let's talk about you and your history as far as like health and fitness. Have you always been into health and fitness? How did you kind of get involved in the industry?
Yes and no. So my mom loves the story and jokes that it was more fun to take me on the tennis court than to play Barbies with me. So I started playing tennis, I'll use that word loosely at 3. But I was on the court. I was a competitive tennis player, went Division 1, played at Boston University. So always involved in athletics. And I actually really got into training when I was an athlete at BU. I love that athletic training component to it, the off the court training. But I was majoring in public relations at the time and thought I wanted to go more, again, that writing route, which ties into, this book opportunity, I guess, in some way. I've always had a passion for it. But I thought I wanted to work in an athletic conference writing about sports. It was my dream job. Got my dream job a few months in and a couple of Long Island iced teas, which is a whole other story. I was complaining to my then boyfriend, now husband, that I did not like it all, this job, this thing that I thought was my dream. And so off of that, I realized my passion was actually for the athletic component, that I had always found empowerment, strength, that really, for me, sports and strength training and even like dietary adjustments were this microcosm to build my personality, my confidence, my life. And it translated out into every other area. So like my act as if, because I was the lowest recruit my year to college, where I thought I wasn't even going to play. And my coach actually didn't even want me. I only got on the team because my assistant coach wanted me there. And I was like, nope, I'm going to act as if I'm the top player. I ended up playing all 4 years above the people that were even recruited the same year as me, but it was that act as if mentality that I saw grow out of it. And I saw so many other areas where my training, my dietary changes really did pay off in so many other mindsets, like shifts. And so for me, that's what spurred this journey. And then as I went into more training, I became injured. I had other problems. I gained the post-college 15, not the freshman 15, the post-college 15, because I was no longer an athlete. So I saw all the different like hurdles that we had to sort of handle in everyday life. And that really spurred me to want to work with, as I call us, normal dysfunctional people, because that's what I consider myself now, to really lead our healthiest, happiest lives. So that was sort of my journey into the training, into the coaching. And I just have a passion for that transformation. Maybe it's because I am so dysfunctional in so many ways and I've seen so much growth in myself, but I want that for everybody else. And so that's what I've tried to instill in these different principles is how did I become an authority, not only from the certifications, but from my life transformation and reflection.
That's amazing that story could help fuel your success later on down the road, which leads us to maybe creating Redefining Strength. Can you tell us a little bit about what that process was like?
So we are lucky we have that name right now because my original blog, and you got it out of me, was called Man Bicep.
Okay.
And Ryan, my now husband, told me I cannot name my gym Man Bicep, which was a good call by him. But that was a joke that came out of the fact that I measured my bicep at one time after reading a men's health magazine. And I was like, wow, my bicep is the size of an average man's. And so it became an inside joke, which then I thought was so funny. I had to make a new blog. Long story short, that is not an appropriate name for a gym and didn't really define the heart of what I wanted to accomplish with the mission forward. And redefining strength is that heart. I want to help people train for not only the person they are, but the person they're becoming. And I want them to redefine what strong means to them in every area of their life, including what they believe about themselves. And it's been interesting going through this journey and writing this book because I realized that strength means so many different things. So often we think of it only in like the gritted out, tough, no pain, no gain mindset. But really, when we understand the softer side of strength, we grow the most. So it's combining all those different things. So for me, redefining strength came about because I wanted to help instill that same empowerment in clients. And it started as a gym in Costa Mesa, California, and grew online because I'm a really big control freak and wanted to be able to help clients not only around the world, but my clients when they weren't with me, because so much of transformation isn't just what we do in the gym. But that's where it really started.
Yeah, gotcha. And we mentioned in the introduction that you specialize mostly in women over 40. We also mentioned that there's a lot of individualization that you guys do. So I'm asking this, 30,000 foot view, very globally, things you've observed. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of individual variation, but what things have you noticed as far as the idea of what strength is for women over 40 and how you help them to kind of redefine that?
I would say for many of us, just as human beings, even, strength is doing it on your own, the whole lone wolf fallacy. It is trying to grit your way through tough times. It is oddly ignoring the negative, and it is never exploring the softer side of ourselves. But what it really has to be is that willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to ask for support, and the willingness to recognize that, yes, we have to own the negative, but we can't wallow in it or ignore it. So I've noticed that basically all the things we think that strength has to be, yes, they have to be that, but with the nuance of we can't let things we denote to be our strengths hide the weaknesses that are always attached to them. Because every strength you have, every good quality you have, probably creates some of the weaknesses or character flaws you also have. And if we don't recognize that they're two sides of the same coin, we ultimately hold ourselves back.
Yeah, that's very well explained. Let me put myself into the position of the thousands of women that you have worked with. And I'm going to say what literally 100% of them guaranteed have told you at some point. You're mentioning strength. To build strength, there's got to be some type of strength training, resistance training component to that. That's not the only component, but that would be some component. Every single female ever will say, well, I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to add a lot of muscle. What do you say to that response you've gotten from probably every single person you've ever worked with ever?
Well, depending on how sassy I'm feeling, I'll be like, well, good luck with that. If you can get bulky, let me know. Because it is very hard to build lean muscle, especially if you're also coming in for recomp and fat loss. Usually the calorie deficit works against quick muscle gains. And the more experienced an exerciser you are, often we think with the more experience, like the faster we should see results. But ultimately, when we've trained for longer, we've adapted to more training stimuli. So we don't see results as fast. So it's a lot slower. So it's going to be really hard. And then the fueling component has to match. And if you're trying for recomp and fat loss and potentially in that calorie deficit, it's just not going to happen. What we often see as bulk is really fat over muscle. So if you're trying to truly achieve recomp dialing in your diet as you're strength training, you're just not going to get bulky. And then, there are different genetic components to it. I won't lie. There are women that can add bulk a little bit more easily than others. And so if you are one of those women, first off, I salute you. You're lucky to an extent, and I know every upside has a downside. But if that is the case, it's adjusting your diet. It's potentially strategically adding cardio. It's also the reps and sets you use. Lifting heavy isn't just for a 5 rep max or a 1 rep max. It's lifting to challenge yourself at every rep range you do, and each rep range has a different benefit. So how you design your workouts, how you lay out moves, how you combine cardio, all these things factor in, as well as your diet, to try and build that lean muscle. But if you aren't trying to build muscle, especially as early as you can, it's only going to get harder the older you get, because we're less able to utilize protein as efficiently. Hormone levels just aren't ideal or optimized for that. Our recovery slows. So, and I mean, if you think about our greatest risk to longevity, it's that risk of losing muscle and falls and fractures. So build that lean muscle. I know we all want to look a certain way, but also train for longevity, as hard as that long-term mindset can be at times.
Yeah, well, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. So I really like the way that you laid that out. And we're always changing, evolving, redefining what we think about certain things. If you've been in the industry for long enough time, you see things differently. Things you were taught you might not agree with, and so it'll be challenging to look back. But what are a few examples of things that you have changed your mind about in the course of your career? And let's use the example that you've given. Somebody that's probably quite average, a client of yours, a woman who would like to recomposition their body, lose fat, gain muscle. What are things you learned in the beginning of your career that you maybe don't really agree with anymore?
I'm not ashamed to admit this, because I think it's actually really amusing, but I was really against tracking macros. I did everything personally to resist it. And anytime a client would say, I don't want to do this, I'd be like, yeah, don't track macros. And then I realized what gets measured gets managed in every area. And the most success I had was when I was tracking different things. And you can become restrictive without having any data, just by like even your mindset towards things. And I realize that's really what it is. It's your mindset towards the tools that ultimately impacts what you believe about them. They can be used in a bazillion different ways. It's why you have one person say, tracking macros is like a game of Tetris. I love it. And other people being like, no, that's restrictive. I hate it. Macros math just blows my mind. And so tracking macros was something I personally resisted and even fought against with clients. If you eat healthy, that's all you need. Well, you can eat healthy and eat portions that aren't in line with your goals and even your body and needs. Health concerns, hormonal shifts, all these things impact the portions we need of protein, carbs, and fat, or the macronutrients. So it's key to recognize that what gets measured gets managed. So that's one of the biggest things that I changed my mind on. And I even had a blog post about why I would never track macros. But not only that, I started to shift my mindset around healthy foods. If you want to see recomp, yes, whole natural foods are key. You need to fuel your body. You don't want to give a nice car crappy fuel, right? You want to give it the fuel it needs. Otherwise, the engine's going to start not working for you. And I don't know any more about cars, so I'll stop there. But you want to make sure that you are getting the whole natural foods. However, the more we demonize other foods and label foods as good and bad, the more we hold ourselves back from true consistency. And I found this out the hard way because every time I would try and diet, because I'm vain. I want to have abs. I want to look a certain level of leanness. So I'm vain. I, wanted to achieve this goal. And every time I would try, I would cut out dessert. And I recognized that this was what ultimately sabotaged me because the one thing I wanted the most, I was not allowing myself to have. So I found that by actually giving myself more of a balance and not labeling foods as good or bad, doing that 8-20 where I include foods I really love that have, no direct health benefit or no physical benefit, but ultimately have a mindset one, which is a whole other ball of wax a little bit, but it's a key component I think we ignore. But I noticed when I did that, so started tracking and then found that balance, that I really started to shift recomp. And I feel like that's something that's hard for a lot of people to understand, that they should do a little bit less while also measuring and managing things to achieve a goal, because it's like studying for a test. If you track your macros, you reach the goal, then what you do to maintain it is a different lifestyle balance. And that might be a little bit more flexible, but you have that tool in your back pocket, right? So it's kind of this thing of stepping back a little bit to ultimately move forward. And then you can do both. You can lose fat as you gain muscle. You just have to have a primary focus.
Yeah, no, I love that. And don't let me put words into your mouth here, but of all the macros you track, is getting people to eat enough protein among the biggest challenges you face?
It sounds like you've talked to people or looked online. Yes, it is. I mean, it was the hardest thing for me. I thought I was eating a lot of protein and I didn't realize I wasn't at all. And it's because, let's face it, carbs and fat generally taste a little bit better. Not that I don't like protein, I do, but it's one of the harder things to start to increase. And so I always have clients start by tracking just what they're currently doing. No changes, because when you do that, you then get to dictate what changes you make. When you come to tracking and you start making all these changes at once, not only does the tracking then feel overwhelming, but you associate tracking with restriction, with cutting things out, with having to make all these overwhelming changes. So the mindset there gets attached to this tool is very negative. So I like to just track, but then you'll start to notice, yes, I'm pretty low on protein, and maybe I even have to adjust my calories, but protein is definitely the macronutrient we focus on first, even if it's just adding 5 grams to one meal. Just add an ounce more of whatever protein source you already have. That's an easy swap.
Yeah, got it. Okay, perfect. This is a very honest question and a very selfish question because I'm asking for myself. I have learned over the years that I am a bit of a sugar addict. If I have a little bit, I want more. Like recently somebody asked me if I have dessert and I say no, I just don't. And they said, "Well, don't you ever have like pie or cake or whatever?" And I asked him like, "When you have a piece of cake, can you have just that one piece and then like walk away and it's not a big deal?" He's like, "Yeah, what's the problem?" I I think about that cake for like another day, day and a half, 2 days. And I love everything you're saying about balance. And I agree. And I promote that. Also, I realize that some people like myself, like it's a little bit easier for me if I call sugar and just it's a red food for me. It just makes me want more and I have a hard time stopping. Would you rather see that type of person continue being so restrictive with their diet? I understand that's not the best. I don't love it. Or do you want that person to say like, okay, let's move towards a more balanced thing and see if we can like get a sugar addict, quote unquote, in that direction? Just your honest opinion.
My honest opinion is it depends, and yours will even evolve over the season. So this is where like that O, that N, so optimizing and even like owning those non-negotiables comes into play of the strong system. Where for me starting out, dessert was a non-negotiable. So I knew I had to optimize my plan around the fact that I needed dessert every night. However, I'm actually like you in that when I have a one Oreo cookie, I'm doing the one more game. Ooh, one more. ooh, one more. And I'm going back to the cabinet a bazillion times just to get one more Oreo until they're all gone. So I recognize that, yes, I need to have dessert, but at this time, having it with specific foods needed to be the case. But for me, telling myself I can't have dessert. So I am making a choice every day as to what dessert I'm having and if I want it. But I planned it in first, and I started by including more macro friendly things. Hey, this hits my sweet tooth. I find this is a balance, but I could have this other thing if I really want it. So just putting it in my head that I could have it. But I think it's owning your mindset about things and what foods do trigger you to not just have one, but also then what replacements are there that make you feel satisfied still. So it's that balance. And you might find at certain times of year, like I found that in January to, about the summer, I'm okay even, even though I'm a cocktail girl, I love my margaritas, not necessarily having them because I have specific goals that I want. But then during the summer, I want that margarita outside by the pool. I don't care. I want it. So I find ways to then include that in my balance. And that sometimes is just having one day I have them. That might mean including them and working them around my macros, but it's recognizing too that even what I need might evolve based on the season. So you might find during the holidays, because you want that cake, that you are going to make a choice to try one piece one day and just have it be like, I am making this choice to do this. But then you might find in trying that, okay, this still doesn't work for me. I'm only going to include it on these days with this balance that I planned in. So it is owning those different things, because some foods are on our red list for most of the time, and we only include them at very specific circumstances, knowing that we have one piece of cake, we're probably going to have the whole cake, and we're okay with that, but only right now.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I really appreciate that. Very sincere and nuanced answer. I think anybody could take that context and try to mix things in and see whether they're good for them or not. So I really do appreciate that a lot. You mentioned the strong system. So let's get into the book. In chapter 1, you talk about a cycle. I believe it's a choice cycle. Is that right?
The change loop.
Change cycle. I was close. The change loop. I was not that close. Never mind.
It was a good try though.
Thank you. Let's hear about the change loop.
So this is something that I found myself stuck in, and I actually find clients constantly stuck in. And the reason it's so hard and we get stuck in it is because we don't recognize the underlying thing causing it. And this comes back to the self-assessment that I realized finally set me free. So if you think about when you have a goal, maybe you've gained some weight over the holidays, maybe, you want to run a marathon, whatever it is, you get really excited about this goal. So you go and you do your research. And if you're my husband, you do a bazillion hours of research. If you're me, you probably click on the first thing and be like, okay, this is good enough. But you look for a program. You get all hyped up about it, which is the program promise. It says lose 10 pounds in 10 days. It says, couch to a marathon in 2 weeks. I haven't seen that one yet, but it promises all these great things, and you get super hyped up about it. So you go all in on those habits. You do everything perfectly. You don't even consider, what does my actual life look like? And is this realistic for me? And so after the program promise, where you jump all in, you get really excited, you make all these changes, you hit that habit overload. And this is the problem, is that we start to think, oh, it's the tracking, or, oh, it's keto and I like carbs. But we don't recognize that some of the habits that are actually overloading us relate back much deeper. But we hit this habit overload. This doesn't feel worth it. The first time you step on the scale, you're like, this doesn't feel worth it. I made all these changes. I'm doing so much. And you might have seen some progress right before it. So it's just that first non-linear day, or that day you go back, all of a sudden you hit habit overload. And so the second you start to think this isn't worth it, you start that emotional sabotage. And for me, because I am a sweets person too, it would be like, I know those cookies are in the cabinet. What about having just one? All of a sudden, the call is even stronger, right? All of a sudden, it feels like something you didn't even care about 2 days before, you just can't live without. And you say, this isn't worth it. It's too much. It's not sustainable. You hit that emotional sabotage, even if you were kind of excited by your results prior and some of the things you were doing were really good. And that's where you end up grabbing the whole box of Oreos, walking to the couch, not caring, and then ordering some DoorDash too, and laying on the couch for the next 5 days, skipping your workouts. It's the I quit. And so then you end up quitting until you get motivated again, and you get another program promise that excites you, and you're in that loop, right? What happens is that we think it's just one specific thing. It's just the keto. It's just that this program had 6 days a week. But what we don't recognize is that there's an underlying thing to all of that. And it's us not owning who and what we are and what's truly important to us to make small changes that build. We always approach it with this all or nothing attitude. But when we hit that emotional sabotage, we do get a chance to make a change. And I will say emotional sabotage kind of kicks in even when you're successful with the program, because I think we've all had it, right? You have that time of year where you're like, I don't fully feel like doing this. You should, but it doesn't feel like something you get to do anymore. It feels like something you have to do. And that reassessment, which is why I constantly ask for reflection, is that you need to assess where has potentially, your lifestyle evolved. So these habits don't feel as doable. Where are you getting a little burned out with things, doing too much? Like, how are you not owning your reality in some way? And that's where you choose things to double down on. And that's where you reveal your own strength and you really see results snowball. But we get caught in that loop because we don't do that assessment.
Can you give us some practical examples of that? I've been reflecting recently on why certain clients succeed and why certain clients fail and get stuck in that loop. And, I think everybody can say like a 6 month, full send jumping off, I'm going to gain 60 pounds starts with those cookies. It's that one little moment that all of a sudden just keeps going. I see it all the time with clients. They go on vacation, they loosen up, and they never get control of the habits that made them successful before. I see it all the time. So what is a practical example of somebody making that assessment and identifying that they're in the loop and getting out?
So I would say identifying it comes before the vacation because you go into the vacation feeling so restricted, not owning why you did those things and not recognizing that your lifestyle can evolve even after. So I'll have clients be like, I want to lose 10 pounds before my vacation or before the holidays. And they'll go all in. They'll make these extreme cuts. We'll do mini cuts even where I like more extremes. I think extremes can have their balance over the course of the year, right? We're a little bit better and then we're a little bit not so good. And so I think there can be balance over the course of the year. And that's how we have to think of it, as that yearly balancing act over just even weeks or months. But before that vacation, what did you do? Did you create so much restriction and that mindset that you can't have any of these things and you have to be so good and perfect with all these different things that on the vacation when you let loose, it was just like, nope. Or was it that you didn't come back with habits in place? Like, I think it's assessing before we even get to that point where that then triggers the reset, but it's planning ahead too and owning, okay, if I'm going on this vacation, what can I come back with? Maybe you're planning to come back and go back into the exact same rigidity you had before, but you're not motivated now. So instead of saying, hey, on past vacations, I've always tried to go into X, but this time I'm not doing keto. This time I'm including carbs and I'm tracking macros, but you're still trying to be restrictive after vacation. How can you actually find a minimum that you'll come back and do? So instead of going back into intensive macro ratios, could you just track protein? Could you have all the meals prepped for that week so that you don't even have to think about tracking and you don't have to log it all, you just eat those? Even planning in meals out, knowing that you won't be as motivated to have your usual meal prep. So I think it's even taking that step back from where we find we usually fall off after to assess why we've fallen off prior. So it's that loop that we find ourselves caught in. And I see it a lot with the holidays. We repeat the same cycle because we're also comparing the holidays to our habits in January. But in January, you have a different motivation. There's different requirements. There's different family obligations. So owning the different seasons allows us to recognize that we usually hit the change loop and the I quit probably at the same point, and it's become a pattern and habit almost to quit at the same point. For some people, it's 21 days. For some people, it's 90 days. For some people, it's the same time of year. But taking that step back to recognize, am I always hitting the same hard and turning back? The hard just has been packaged by a different program.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the holidays. That was something I was definitely thinking of. And one of my favorite conversations to have with my clients when they say like, oh, let's not worry about training. It's October 31st and I'm passing out candy. I'm not going to be in it. I've got holiday parties and Thanksgiving coming up and all the Christmas and all these things. And it's like, if you actually sit down with somebody and show them like, which days do you have parties? Okay, there's 5. It's not that many. How many meals inside of those days are going to be problematic? Okay, maybe 1 in each of those. And you can do other steps. Like, what if you just go to this party, but before you go, you eat a decent amount of protein or you drink some water? Like, there's so many things that you can do to help set up wins through challenging times, as long as you're doing what you're saying. Like, sit down, plan ahead, see what is the minimum that you're willing to do, and you can be hugely successful where other people are going to get to the other side of the holidays weighing 30 pounds more than they are, and they just make it so much harder on themselves.
The wrong time to start is the right time to start. And so often we really do repeat the same cycle because we're waiting for this perfect time and we only make changes based on ideals. If tomorrow is Halloween, it's October 30th, you're like, no way I'm starting today. I'll wait till after Halloween. No, start today. Do one thing that you know you can even do on the 31st that's better than you would have been on the 31st the year before. That's how change is actually built. The little 1% improvements, not even compared to our ideal times in a year, but compared to how you would have handled that the year prior. And I say this as a person who repeated the holiday cycle for probably a decade, where I would get lean after, my January kickstart, I would lean down, do my, little photos, look all good. And then, the slide would happen a little bit over the summer, but I was consistent enough because it was warm. I was out and active, but then the holidays would hit. And all of a sudden, the excuses I made during the summer not to track, to do these different things, they were really me hiding from the reality of what was going on. And so I noticed the same pattern repeating every holiday season, but I couldn't force myself into the same habits I had in January. They just felt too restrictive. And that's also part of why I kept resisting it more and more. And I found the same cycle repeating. Once I first owned, okay, the holiday season is different for me. What can I do? What feels so silly simple I can do it no matter what? Okay, I'm just going to track this holidays. Maybe I won't make any changes, but I'm going to track because every other holiday I make the excuse, I'm not going to track. I know what I'm doing. I clearly did not know what I was doing. And once I started tracking, I'm like, oh, this is not good. And then from tracking, I'm like, well, if I'm tracking already, why not try and hit this protein minimum? And from there, each holiday since then has gotten better and better because I found more and more of a balance. It's not the same balance that's used during other times of year, but it's gotten better because I've owned the reality of that and taken small actions that allow me to build.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's very well explained. Is this the best time now to bring in the STRONG acronym?
Great.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell us about the STRONG acronym, starting with significant, I believe.
Yeah. So when I was developing this, I was not an advocate of mindset work or goal setting, which is really funny because now I'm all about both of those things because I realized what the hangup for me was. And it was that it never owned where we were starting from fully and then assessed where we wanted to go and laid it out like a GPS. Because I think it was Eisenhower that said, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And so that really hit home for me with designing all of this, where the more we own where we are each time, we can make little 1% improvements that ultimately are guiding us forward while understanding the overall direction we need to go. So starting with significant, it was really understanding, why do you want this? And what I went back to was my journey to get abs, which to a lot of people, you're like, so you wanted to lose a little bit of extra body fat, look a little extra lean. Like, even that's what I said to myself in my head. Oh, this is vain. It's not about getting stronger or all the things I thought I should want. And I wasn't competing in, a stage competition. There was nothing to be gained from this other than personal vanity and wanting the goal. And so I'd always sort of written myself off and never prioritized it. And I recognized that by prioritizing this thing that was really only for me, not essential by any means, I actually built a lot of confidence. I forced myself to reflect in ways I hadn't before. I built strength in conquering things that were challenging before. I pushed myself to a new level and I saw how much that paid off in every other area of my life. And I mean, honestly, I credit that with a lot of where I am today, not only professionally, but in my personal life, everything. But it came from this one goal that I could have just labeled as losing 5 pounds. And so I really think that everything starts with owning all of the spider web of reach that our goals can have. Because even like a mom wanting to lose the last 5 pounds to feel her most fabulous, that's inspiring her daughter to never sort of put her goals on the back burner. So I think recognizing that importance is really what then drives you forward so that you are willing to embrace the changes and the new identity you'll be stepping into.
Got it. Okay. So when we're talking about a significant goal, we want it to be important enough that it will keep us motivated throughout and days that, like you said, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah, understanding why we value it. And I think motivation is a fickle friend. So I think, there is creating that initial motivation, but it's creating that why that also makes you weigh at different points the cost and reward of different habits. Because sometimes we want to do a habit, but we have to recognize that habit in that form is too much for us at this time. And so the pain of change has to outweigh the pain of staying stuck, basically. And so if that isn't the case, you can't always change the pain of staying stuck, at least without doing negative things that dig you a hole, but you can change the pain of change. So understanding how significant your goal is to you and what priority it sort of falls to on your list can help you then determine the habits that actually match it.
Got it. Okay. And that takes us to T, targeted. And we've talked a little bit about some of those things, macros, workouts. What other things are we specifically looking to target and how are we targeting them?
So setting those targets is about setting not only that main goal, but yes, those complementary habit goals, complementary goals that help you drive forward. So I like to think of it as the more ways we measure success, the more successful we will be. If you're only looking at the scale to measure success, you could be missing all the other ways that the healthy habits are paying off and then ultimately give up on something that's working, feeling like it isn't. Like I've had clients who are like, oh, my pants are fitting looser, but then they step on the scale and the scale number is the same. And all of a sudden they're like, this isn't working. And it's like, well, you are seeing recomp. And of course, that's another discussion that I think we're not often taught enough about when we see recomp and we're gaining muscle and losing fat and potentially not seeing the scale change. But we're missing that other opportunity to see that the habits are working to keep going where the scale then might change, especially if that is the direction we're driving. So I like to set goals in multiple different ways, even like performance goals. So maybe you're trying to lose weight. We know our training is important, but what would motivate you to go to the gym consistently to have that help in your weight loss journey? Maybe you set a pull-up goal. Maybe you set a deadlift goal. Maybe you set a race you're training for. But what will help in consistency in those habits and help you see progress in another way, knowing that those things are building? And with tracking macros, it might be trying new meals and setting a goal with that of trying different recipes. It might be the daily consistency in logging. But the more ways we find to measure success and the more targets we give ourselves to drive towards, breaking those even down into mini targets, the better off we're going to be. And when you're setting these goals, these targets, it's not setting an end date. That's one thing I want to be very clear on. It's a checkpoint. You cannot control the rate at which results happen, but you can control your actions. And then you can give yourself times that motivate you to start now, but also give you that point to trust the process till. Because I think that's a big thing we hear, trust the process. Well, if you're just potentially doing this forever and you don't know when you'll make a change, it's harder to trust the process versus if you have that checkpoint, that assessment, you're like, okay, I'm doing this till X as an experiment. And at that point, I can reassess and make changes.
Yeah, that's a really important point. How many times have you seen somebody training for that event, for that race and whatever, and that day gets there and it's gone in an instant, and now they have nothing to look forward to. They're not planning on reassessing at that point because they got to their event and they can fall way off again and have to start all over from scratch. You see it all the time as well.
Those checkpoints are so key in always setting that next goal. Even when you reach your goal, you're going to have to maintain. And in maintenance, you're constantly having to look for new things. And that's even where performance goals and such can play in even more. But we like direction drives us. I'm sorry. Like when I think about lifestyle and I think about what's sustainable now isn't what was sustainable years ago. And I even hate that word sort of, oh, I'm building a lifestyle. Okay, but your lifestyle is going to evolve. Nothing works forever. We don't do one thing forever. We're human. We want new to some extent.
Yeah, got it. Okay, well, the R repeatable has a lot to do with that sustainability as well. And we do live in a world where we can scroll on Instagram and see the latest, greatest, shiny program that looks amazing and promises the world that is probably going to end up being another failure in the change loop. And so, how do you help people understand what kinds of things should be repeated, even if it doesn't look as sexy as like a new program, for example?
Habits that are repeatable are something we can do right now. And I say that like also owning that change is not easy. So what ends up being sustainable doesn't always feel sustainable to start. But what you need to sort of do is think about when you're thinking about repeatable habits, what are the habits I think I need to achieve my goals? And then what actually is doable right now, or what feels so overwhelming that I instantly feel that mental resistance pop up. And I like to think about it as carrying rocks across a field. And there's even some boulders in there. And if you go try and push that boulder that first day, you're probably just going to wear yourself out, not do anything and turn back. But if you start potentially with some smaller pebbles or even some small stones and start carrying those across, filling your bag to carry them as much as you can, you're going to see progress build. So you have to recognize there are those boulders, those big rock habits, different things that weigh different amounts and cost you different amounts of time, energy, money potentially to do. And the more you assess like the habits you feel like you should do and what they will cost you, the more you can break off even parts that are repeatable to start. Because we do have this like idea too that habits have to be done in a specific way. Like when you think about do a workout plan, each of us has a vision of what that perfect workout plan should look like. Mine is 6 days a week, 1 hour in the gym. That's what I was brought up thinking I needed to do. But what I've learned is that sometimes 3 days a week designed strategically is way better because I'm actually consistent with it. And I build that forward momentum. I stay consistent through times where I would do nothing. So owning, hey, that's what's actually repeatable right now will build way more momentum than trying to force myself into something that's not repeatable long-term. And what is repeatable does evolve. And that's why we have to do that constant reflection. But it's sort of doing that assessment of what we think we need and then what feels doable right now.
Yeah. And I'm assuming as a coach, your primary job is to break down the goal to get smaller, generally speaking, because most people overshoot. They think they should be pushing that boulder in the beginning. So much of what we have to do is like, no. Let's go down to something you said earlier. What's this most simple, stupid thing that you can do that you know you can do? It's almost laughable. Let's start with that because yes, those habits will build over time.
And I'll play the devil's advocate a little bit with that, is that that's one angle. But I also have clients that if they don't see progress fast enough, and I was kind of this way too. If I don't see progress fast enough with something, I'm going to give up on it. And so I need to do a lot. But then I owned the significance of what I wanted. And I recognize, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice more for this, but then I need an exit strategy. I need to know how hard habits are going to feel for me, or that these might add up in terms of difficulty. Because if you think about it, a lot of people will be like, I know I need to track. It's helped me in the past, but it's hard and I always fall off. Okay, well, why don't we get started with that? Because you know you'll see fast progress, but then discuss, why have you always fallen off? How can we sort of lower this resistance against this habit over time? And maybe it goes from tracking the full macro ratios to just tracking protein to using visual guides even. So it's recognizing that you have to own who and what you are and what you need out of things and what sacrifices feel worth it to determine how big the habit actually is for you.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Well said. The O in strong, it stands for optimization. Tell us about optimization, why you chose to write about that as well.
So you are optimizing for who and what you are. And a lot of times we don't consider, where am I at right now? We think about the ideals. We get very caught up in, this is best, I'm going to do this. Well, no one thing is best if you're not going to repeat it consistently. And again, things will evolve, but part of optimization is really understanding who and what you are and owning your lifestyle and then designing around it and recognizing that those things will shift and that reflection is so key. So for me, it really is, we don't do that mindset work enough. We think of tools and tactics and habits we can put on ourselves, but we also don't recognize all the unlearning that goes with learning those new habits. And I mean, if you think about kids, right, they learn so easily because they don't have a lot of bad habits or mindsets to unlearn. So as we get older, more of that stuff gets ingrained, and we've probably been doing a whole heck of a lot longer. Like, I know there are bad habits I've had for decades at this point. And so for me, it's going to be unlearning that habit, which is like so many steps in and of itself before I even learn that habit. But yet so often we try and just learn the habit and don't optimize for all the other things that are going on.
Got it. Okay, I understand. And then the N stands for non-negotiable. How do we choose our own non-negotiables in our life?
What do you feel like you can't live without? What is something that no matter how busy your day is, you will do? Or what is something that the second you think about cutting it out, like that wine night on Friday night, or that happy hour, or the dessert, or maybe it's, just sitting watching reality TV. What is something that you think about sacrificing? You're like, I know I should, but there is no way I want to. I'm not going to keep this out long term. Like, I even had a client come to me at one point and she's like, do I have to cut out alcohol? And I'm like, well, if you're asking me this question, is it realistic for you to cut out alcohol? Because for her, that was a non-negotiable to start. She actually did cut it out at one point because she realized it was hindering her from seeing the results she wanted, and that what we do to maintain our result is not necessarily what we do to get there. And sometimes we have to make more sacrifices in the journey and then ultimately evolve to more balance afterwards. But when we ask that question of, do I have to do X? You're putting up a mental barrier against it. So it's probably not the thing you should start with. So if there are non-negotiables, make sure you plan those in first and then work other things around it. And things that you might not prioritize even, put those first in your day. So if you are like, my non-negotiable is that I want to watch reality TV at the end of the night, but I know that's right now the easiest time to get in my workout. A, how could I connect the habits? Could I do the walk on the night that reality TV is on and watch it as I walk, and that's my workout? Or B, knowing that my workout will be skipped, because I'll want to watch this at the end of the day, especially on a stressful day, can I get my workout in early on in the day, even if I have to shorten it and it's not as long as it would be at night? So it's sort of owning those non-negotiables to really plan around, and that drives every habit we start with.
Okay, got it. And then the G stands for go, my favorite one of all, I think. Tell us about the last one.
The mindset work is key, but nothing changes if nothing changes. And I always found that I had that hang up with goals, is that we would set these goals, it would feel really good, but we never fully gave ourselves the how or took immediate action on them. And so for me, a really key component of any system that is going to lead to success and align who and what you are with who you want to become, it's going to start with action. And now this will not be perfect action. It's probably going to be messy. It's going to be done at a time you don't want to do it. It's going to be that silly, simple thing often, but that action is what builds momentum. We don't consider momentum to creating motivation, to creating that forward progress enough. But the more you do, and that can go in either direction. Have you noticed, like, when you fall off at potentially the holidays, if you're guilty like me of doing that, that the more you sit on the couch, the more you start to not eat so well, and the more other healthy habits slide, right? So the more you do can carry you either way. And even if we have like 6 days a week that we've designed to work out, and then we end up working out 3, we can feel like failures because we had said we would work out 6. Versus if you set yourself to train twice a week because that seemed very realistic, you knew you could do it no matter what, and you train 3, all of a sudden 3 feels really positive and makes you want to do more. So the go is about understanding that the more you create that momentum, the more you're going to create that motivation, the more you're going to see progress, and all of that's just going to spiral into this positive direction and really snowball.
Yeah, you think of it as either a negative spiral, like you said, or a positive one, and you can build momentum in either direction. So yeah, I love that. I think the acronym is really great and very practical for a lot of people who feel like, they're out there failing to get to their goals every January, but they don't understand some of these principles. Is there anything else that you write about in your book that you want to cover?
I just want to encourage people to start now and do that mindset reflection because I think that's so key. And I say this as a person who like sort of felt that mindset work at one point was, yeah. And then I started to realize how much affirmations don't have to be the traditional positive ones. It can be, in my case, suck it up, buttercup is one of my favorite ones, but it can be that thing that reminds you of how key it is to understand yourself to drive forward. But the more you reflect, the more you own what's going on and see any struggle or like failure as just learning with frustration, the more you can dig into those things to really learn and move forward. Because success is failure. You're going to have to fail, fall down a ton of times. And the most successful people have probably failed the most. So I would just say, really do that reflection and own who and what you are. It's not always comfortable to do. And it can feel really weird to sort of like be like, oh, I'm diving into even my childhood. I know that sounds really deep, but sometimes even going that far back can allow you to see mindsets that are dictating how you're viewing so much of what you're doing and the limitations you're even putting on yourself, which then impacts the tools and tactics you need to build that healthy lifestyle you want. And this doesn't just apply to fitness, it applies to so many areas of our life. So I would say if you're avoiding the mindset work, the thing we often avoid the hardest is the thing we need the most. So you got to dive in there and you've got to do constant reflection.
I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love that. You're getting this book out into the world, which must feel amazing for you, and that must make you feel so proud that you were able to do it. What's next for you? How do you see things evolving over time?
I want to spread this everywhere and I want to keep spreading just that empowerment to women, helping them really understand who and what they are and where they want to go. And for me, it's all about strength, strength in body, strength in mind. So for me, it's any way I can do that. And I will say, I don't have a clear vision or answer for that question because for right now, I'm celebrating the book and living a little bit in the moment with that because I think so often we don't pause to appreciate all that we've done and we just blow past it and think, what's next? But I'm finding joy in that.
Great answer. I absolutely love that. Cori, this has been an amazing conversation. I love your energy and positivity. And like I said, I think there's a lot of really good practical information in the book that's going to make a big impact. So I really appreciate, I don't understand, but I really appreciate how much work it would have taken to put into get this out there. And I hope you're very, very proud. And I hope you take as much time as you like to really reflect in that moment, like you said. So thank you so very much for writing it. And thank you for going through so many different experiences in your life without quitting and putting this book out there that's now going to help so many people. Cori, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work? And where can people find the book?
I'm redefining strength everywhere. So redefiningstrength.com. I'm redefining strength on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. And redefiningstrength.com/book. If you want to find out more about the book, it's also on Amazon as well. But thank you for allowing me to get to nerd out about all these things I'm so passionate about.
I could tell you're a little bit passionate for sure.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. No, this has been awesome. We'll be sure to link all of that in the notes so people can find it. This episode is going to drop very close to when your book is released. And so, like I said, I hope you take plenty of time to be proud and really enjoy the book launch. But for now, thank you so very much for all the wisdom you shared with us today, for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. We really appreciate you, Cori.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.